Can you guess what we're going to talk about today? I am wearing a visual clue just for you. Although it does actually say in the title of the video what we're going to be speaking about, so yeah, I should have thought that through a bit better. But throughout this video, I will be wearing this. I'm not going to get changed halfway through it. I'll start stripping off for you. That's not appropriate for YouTube. But ladies, if you need that, you know where I am. Anyway, yes, I'm going to wear this throughout because it's the kind of considerate person I am. So you can be reminded, if you happen to be a goldfish watching this who can't retain your memory, you'll be reminded what it is we're talking about. Welcome back to the White Album in Depth. That was an utterly awful intro, but there we go. This is episode 8. Happiness is a Warm Gun. Pew, pew, pew. Written by John Lennon, Happiness is a Warm Gun consists of 4 song fragments that Lennon joined together to create one masterpiece of a song, really, let's be honest. So, where better to start than taking a deeper dive into each one of those 4 fragments? Right, for this first section, you're all going to have to drop acid to understand what we're going to be talking about here. So everybody take their acid now. You're all on the trip. Have a good trip. Remember, drop acid, not bombs. Here we go. The first section consists of phrases thought up by John Lennon and Apple publicist Derek Taylor while the pair shared an acid trip with Neil Aspinall and Pete Shotton. So the first line of the song, "She's not a girl who misses much," this is actually Scouse slang. This is a term of endearment, basically. It's just a term that a girl approves you, you know. You know, my bird, she approves, you know. She's not a girl who misses much, my bird. Hey, alright. So the next line in the song about the velvet hand, this actually came from Derek Taylor. He was relaying the story about when him and his wife went to the Isle of Man for a holiday. And while they were there, they encountered a local chap. Now, I think a bit of alcohol might have been involved to get this tale told. But the local chap started telling him all about his sex life. Let's not beat around the bush. And a fetish that he had. He liked to wear a moleskin glove while he was with his girlfriend because it created an interesting sensation. I don't think Derek Taylor and his wife really wanted to know this, so they didn't ask anymore. But yeah, that's what inspired that line, this bloke on the Isle of Man and his fetish. So the next line, this is the one about the lizard on the window pane. This one was inspired again by Derek Taylor. He was relaying a tale again. He likes telling stories, as our Derek. He was telling John and the others a story about how when he lived in LA and the lizards that would appear on his window pane. It's pretty self-explanatory, really. There's not much in depth to look at with that line. So the next line in the song, this is the line about the man in the crowd. This is quite an interesting one because it comes from a newspaper article. Now what happened was it was a story about a man who had been arrested, and he was a Manchester City fan, and what he did was he stuck some mirrors to his shoes. Now when he went to the football matches, he was caught looking down at the mirrors and people were like, well, what's he doing that for? It turned out the reason he was doing it was because when he looked down at the mirrors on his shoes, it allowed him to see up ladies' skirts. Now naturally that's not cool really, it's a bit pervy. Well, it is pervy. He got arrested for it. So yeah, that's what inspired that line. But, you know, if he'd worked for the Daily Mail or the Sun as a photographer, as the paparazzi, he would have been perfectly fine. He wouldn't have been arrested for that. It's called upskirting these days, apparently. I don't know if the press can still get away with it, but they could a few years ago still. It's wrong. So the line about the hands working overtime, this was again inspired by a story from Derek Taylor. He'd read about a man who was using fake hands to help him with shoplifting. It's quite a genius way, really. Yeah, so that's where that one came from. So the final line of this section, and arguably the best lyric in the entire song, a soap impression of his wife which he ate and donated to the National Trust. Again, this mostly comes from Derek Taylor, although he doesn't know where the line of soap impression of his wife that he ate came from. But if I was a betting man, I'd say that's probably a sexual reference that Lennon inserted because, you know, a man eating his wife. Come on, gentlemen, I think we know what they're getting at there, and ladies, I suppose. Yeah, we're all adults here. It's a sexual thing, innit? It's a very good thing as well. If you're not old enough to know what that means, ask your parents. But anyway, the bit about donating to the National Trust. Again, this is quite interesting. This was the group, while they were on acid, were discussing about the state of Merseyside, on the walkways of Merseyside. Now, basically, what this lyric means is it's about people crapping, shall we say, in bushes or on National Trust property, like air raid shelters and stuff all around Merseyside. It was, yeah, basically having a walk along there and seeing that some very nice person has had a shit on the National Trust property. So that's what that means, donated to the National Trust. It's donating your shit basically to them, having a crap on a National Trust property. It's poetry, isn't it? Now this is where the genius of John Lennon came in, because he then, all these random things, this acid conversation they've been having, he combined it all together to create the first section of this song. It's brilliant, isn't it? I mean, who else could do that? I mean, imagine that. Just talking absolute gibberish with your friends and then making it into a song. It's brilliant. What a guy he was. Okay folks, the acid trip is over. It's time now to move on to the second section of the song. Again though, this one is also inspired by drugs, but it's not quite as cool a drug as acid. Not acid's cool, I'm not condoning taking that, I'm not suggesting you should take that by any means, but you definitely shouldn't take what this next one's about. This is the section of the song about needing a fix. This is pretty much, we assume anyway, it's about heroin. This is the most direct John was while he was in the Beatles about heroin. Now obviously in his solo career with stuff like Cold Turkey, he would be much more direct about it.
But temperature rising, fever is high, can't see no future, can't see no sky, feet are so heavy, so is my head, wish I was a baby, I wish I was dead, cold turkey, it got me on the run.
But this was the only time in the Beatles he really ever did it. Now we actually denied that this was about heroin, but you know, what else could it be really? I mean, it makes sense. So yeah, that's what the second section of the song's about. Mother Superior jumped the gun! Mother Superior jumped the gun! Yeah, it's the third section of the song. This is the line, Mother Superior jumped the gun. This is the first part of the song really that hasn't been inspired by drugs. This is a natural drug, I suppose. This is lust. This is Lennon's then infatuation with Yoko Ono. This was when they were just starting their relationship. This was when he was most sexually attracted to her. So that's what this section of the song is about. It's about Yoko. Mother Superior was, it's not weird at all, that was the nickname that John had for Yoko. And the jump the gun thing is apparently a sexual reference. I'm too innocent though to understand anything like that. So the fourth and final section of the song, this was inspired by a magazine. The magazine was called The American Rifleman, and George Martin owned this magazine, and he brought it into Abbey Road one day and he showed John Lennon the magazine, and John was very fascinated by it. So the magazine included the line, "Happiness is a warm gun in your hand." Now Lennon thought that this phrase was absolutely fantastic, but also insane. John took two things from this. He liked the double meaning that you could associate with this line. Firstly, there was the one that the magazine was obviously intending, the gun, you know, shooting a gun basically, that's what the magazine was about. But the other one, well, you know, happiness is a warm gun in your hand. Use your imagination, folks. So this phrase inspired Lennon to use it over a traditional doo-wop chord sequence. So yeah, that became the fourth section of the song. Now, we don't know for certain when John decided to combine these four song fragments together, but when the Beatles regrouped at George Harrison's house in Esher on the last week of May of 1968, they began recording 27 acoustic demos. The vast amount of these would end up on the White Album, and one of the songs recorded that day would be Happiness is a Warm Gun. At this point, John had combined sections 2 and 3 together, but that was it. So yeah, the demo here is quite lacklustre, there's not really a lot to it, it's just him strumming an acoustic guitar, singing about needing a fix, and then Mother Superior jumped the gun. But obviously even John knows that the song needs quite a lot added to it, because he's sort of just improvising words, he just starts singing Yoko Ono to fill in like the gaps and stuff. So yeah, it is there on the Esher demos if you want to listen to it. It's on the 50th anniversary edition of the White Album, but it's not one of the better demos in my opinion anyway. In fact, it's probably one of the weakest on it. At some point between the last week of May 1968 and September 23rd, 1968, John had the idea to combine these 4 song fragments he had together into one complete song. The Beatles would then begin work on this song and begin recording it. The Beatles got to work on Happiness is a Warm Gun on September 23rd, 1968, and this would be by far the most complex song that they would record for the White Album. So for this first day of sessions, the band focused purely on getting the basic track nailed down. For this basic track, Lennon sang a guide vocal whilst playing electric guitar. McCartney played bass, Harrison also played electric guitar, and Ringo played the drums. The band recorded 45 takes of the song that day. However, a lot of these takes broke down because the band was struggling with the complexities of the song and the various tempo changes that were throughout it. So since most of these takes broke down, nothing was really used from this day's sessions. However, if you do want to hear take 19, which is the only thing that's ever been released from this day of sessions, you can. It's on the 50th anniversary edition of the White Album. It's quite good actually. It's quite nice to hear Lennon's vocal in just a nice little pure form. It's very nice. It's not as good as the finished thing, but it's still very nice. Very nice. Yeah, it's very nice, you know, it's very nice. The following day, on September 24th, 1968, the Beatles continued work on Happiness is a Warm Gun. They would record a further 25 takes this day, and they would all be still playing the same instruments as the day before. Eventually, the band felt that they had nailed the basic track at last. Of the 70-ish takes that they'd done, they decided that for the bulk of the song, take 53 was the best one. However, for the 4th section of the song, they decided that take 65 was the best. The following day, on September 25th, 1968, the Beatles once again worked on Happiness is a Warm Gun. The first thing that they needed to do was combine takes 53 and 65 together. Now this was very similar to what they'd done with Strawberry Fields Forever, where they had to combine take 7 and take 26 together on that song. I've actually done a whole video on that, go and check that out if you want. But for this it was much more simpler because of the nature of the song than what it had been with Strawberry Fields. But if you listen to the song around the 135 mark, that is where the edit happens, that is where it transitions from take 53 to 65, which you can kind of tell, but you know, you probably wouldn't know if I hadn't told you that. Anyway, once the edit was done, the band were now finally ready to start overdubbing onto the track. These overdubs included John Lennon's lead vocals. He would also record the backing vocals along with Paul McCartney and George Harrison. John also recorded lead guitar and organ for the track. Paul also recorded some more bass, as well as a piano part and a tuba part, and Ringo recorded some hi-hat and tambourine. However, the piano, organ and tuba parts were all left off on the final mix, so they wasted the time doing them really. But anyway, with that all done, the song was finally finished. The White Album was released on the 22nd of November 1968, and Happiness is a Warm Gun was sequenced as the 8th track on the running order. It was also the final track on side 1 of the album. The song was reportedly Paul McCartney and George Harrison's favourite song on the White Album, and there's even reports to suggest that John Lennon and Ringo Starr also thought that this was the best song on the album. But yeah, there's the potential that all 4 Beatles agreed that this was the best song on the White Album. But despite all 4 Beatles thinking that this was the best song on the White Album, it didn't stop the BBC from banning it from being played on the radio. They banned it because they perceived it to have sexual references and drug references throughout of it. Which they're probably not wrong, to be fair, but you know, they play a lot worse on the radio these days. I don't know if it's still banned now, but naturally people will just want to go out and listen to it more. If they get it banned, it's kind of like a badge of honour that your song's been banned on the radio. So yeah, it was never even a single anyway, so I never really understood why they bothered banning album tracks, because it was never going to get played anyway, but yeah. So for me personally, this is definitely one of the highlights of the White Album. You can hear when you listen to it why some people say that this is the best song on the White Album. You can tell listening to this song that all 4 Beatles are contributing to it, they're giving it their all, it's probably why it's their favourite on it. A lot of songs on the White Album get criticised because it feels like that the respective writer is leading the song and the other 3 are just backing him up. So for example, Bungalow Bill, you can tell that's a John Lennon song that the other 3 are kind of just backing him up on. There's not really any band contributions to it that you can feel. Whereas with this song you can feel that even though John Lennon has wrote this song, I think all 4 of them have probably equally contributed to it, and they've made it into this masterpiece of a song. The combining of incomplete songs together has always traditionally been a McCartney kind of thing. You know, the whole thing of combining A Day in the Life with Paul's song and John's song, I think that was Paul's idea. Band on the Run, stuff like that. You Never Give Me Your Money, that whole Abbey Road medley. It's just, that's Paul's thing, it always has been. But this goes to show that John is also very good at it if he wants to do it. I don't know if it was maybe because we don't know when the combination of the incomplete songs happened. Maybe it was Paul that suggested to John to combine them. We don't know. Paul's never said. And I imagine if he had suggested it, actually, he'd have confessed to it by now. He'd want, you know, people to know that Paul was involved in the creation of the greatest White Album track. So, yeah. But it is a traditionally McCartney thing to do, I would say, combining of incomplete songs. The song travels through different genres of rock and roll, and that's probably why the Beatles found it quite hard to record, why they were challenged during the recording of it, because it was different genres. It wasn't just the same thing playing the same chords throughout. You can tell it's a complex song from listening to it. In some ways, I hate to make this comparison, it's similar to Bohemian Rhapsody, the way that, you know, it's different fragments, it's different genres really, but this is a much better song than Bohemian Rhapsody because, I want to be very controversial here, Bohemian Rhapsody is utter shite. Hate it, absolutely hate it. If I never hear that song again, I will, be very, very happy. I absolutely despise Bohemian Rhapsody. But this song is kind of similar to that. Good Vibrations as well, it's kind of similar to that by the Beach Boys. There you go, Happiness is a Warm Gun and Good Vibrations. They're both great songs, like Bohemian Rhapsody. But yeah, it is similar. It's that kind of style of music, if you get what I mean, if you get what I'm trying to say. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's pretty easy to see why a lot of people would say this is the best song on the White Album. It is utter brilliance. If you haven't ever heard it, I'm surprised you've got this far into the video. But if you haven't, do give it a listen because you will not be disappointed. This song, through and through, is a masterpiece. So that concludes this episode of the White Album in depth and the first side of the White Album. That's side 1 complete. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please do consider subscribing. You can also find all previous episodes in this series and all future episodes in the playlist on my channel. You can find it on there somewhere, I'm sure. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, like I say, and I will see you next time where we're going to flip the record over and we're going to hear all about Paul's beloved sheepdog Martha. Until then though, do take care.